when we begin to look, we have to be clear that everything starts to unravel in the most glorious way. And we begin by recognizing, first of all, that I'm upset. When we notice we're upset, I often say to my clients that this is profound awareness that you are developing, and that's important for one reason, that you're expanding your contextual field. The awareness that we have about ourselves, life, and other people reflects our contextual field, which is basically our knowledge base from which we live. So as soon as we begin to look in a different way as the witness, we expand our contextual field. And what that's doing essentially is opening the door to the more that we've been unable to see, to bring and allow peace into our lives.
Welcome to Letting Go and the Greatest Secret, where we explore the end of your suffering and the beginning of lasting happiness. I'm Hale Dwoskin, and today I'll be joined by Dr. Sally Gray. Dr. Sally Gray has been a leader and a voice in the field of human potential and more recently non-duality for nearly 30 years. She is devoted to leading from love and lighting the way for those with a desire for the supreme knowing of life, awakening from the dream world into oneness. In your experience, what is what we're all looking for?
Well, I was misguided for so much of my life, thinking that it was something in the world.
Mm-hmm.
I was on a pretty committed mission to find that thing. And I thought it was a relationship, money, a career, fame, success, that mythical moment when I felt like I'd made it. And so I often say that I accidentally discovered what I didn't even realize I was looking for, which is myself, a knowing of my true essence. And when I had a taste of that and realized that that was even on the menu,
Right.
and to explore that as deeply as I possibly could, I realized that fulfillment, real fulfillment, not anything that's temporal, not those experiences that we all have that make us feel happy for a period of time or good about ourselves or even joyful or perhaps even blissful. And then it goes. I realized there was something more. And so that's been my accidental discovery and my commitment and devotion. And what I know that self to be is the realization and revelation of the infinity of omnipresence and omniscience and omnipotence that I call God.
Beautiful, beautiful. And so, what is your experience of that now? When did you get this recognition?
Well, I would love to say that it happened overnight and all in one go, but for me, it was a process. It was a process of inquiry, of purification, I think is a really wonderful way of describing this. The word that symbolizes the shedding of what I am not, seeing the false as false. And so I had glimpses, I think, all of my life and didn't realize what I was glimpsing, what was perpetually leading me on this search for what's behind that, what else is there. There was this impulse that continued to drive me, and the turning point really was 14 years ago when my father passed away. And in the 24 hours that occurred, I felt incredible peace and joy. And I felt really confused, actually, and quite guilty about that for a while because so many others around me were grieving. And I didn't really understand what was going on. And so I continued to reflect. And what happened quite organically was this inner journey that commenced without me really asking for it.
Yes.
But actually, I had been asking for it because I'd been driven by this question, what's behind that in my career as a naturopath and functional medicine practitioner? Always wondering, what's behind that? What's behind that? What's behind that? I don't know where this question actually started, but that drove me beyond that profession into what's behind that at the deepest level, because I think that's where the answers are for all of us.
Yes.
And we're duped by a contextual issue. We don't realize what the more is.
Yes.
And so I had these ongoing glimpses that just expanded. So the experience for me is still expanding peace, expanding joy. I realize I am found. It just expands in every good way possible, the likes of which I wasn't able to make or do in chasing the dream in the world.
Yes. Yes. It's what's natural.
It feels natural. Absolutely.
Yes. Yes. And again, if there's, in the beginning, it feels like there's effort required to shed limitation. But isn't it ultimately a discovery that even the limitation was part of the perfection, part of this
Yes.
beingness, or you call it God, that all is?
Yes, I love that, because it becomes all embraced, all encompassing. There's nothing that's separate. This idea of the limitation, which I refer to as the sense of a person, the sense of being something in the midst of something, rather than one with all that is. And so it is natural, as you say. It unfolds without all the effort being what I or any one, so to speak, has to give.
Yes.
There is a natural impulse that pulls us home.
Yes.
But there is tremendous effort required to purify the mind and question perspective.
Yes. Yes. So again, as you probably know, the Sedona method is focused in a very similar way. It's purifying the mind and discovering what's beyond all our illusions of separation and limitation. So, yeah, we're very much in alignment there. The one something that's being recognized here more recently is that even the purification, even that which seemed to need to be purified, was already that which we thought we needed to purify ourselves first to get. Have you noticed that too?
Yes, and I think there's a point at which language really fails us if we take that word literally. There's nothing to be purified.
Yes.
As such, there's nothing that is impure. Only love is real. What has really illuminated the language for me more than anything, and I do love Sedona. Sedona has been part of my life for quite some time, and I think it's a gift to the world. The language that I tend to speak more of is A Course in Miracles. Yes. A Course in Miracles meets Vedanta, someone said to me once.
That's what it sounds like as you're speaking. You're using your Vedanta often shies away from the more flowery language, where the Course in Miracles is really into it.
Yeah, and we're going beyond language. It really is.
Of course.
It's where the intellect doesn't get to come along for the entire ride, because this journey of purification is the exploration of what isn't. If there's a word that describes it better, I'm all for it, because it's not a journey of having to, as I say, purify anything. No one's impure. The idea that we are separate is the only impure thought. In fact, much of spiritual tradition tells us that the idea of sin is really just the idea of separation. Sin is just an idea of separation. So there's nothing that is wrong about anyone
Or anything.
or anything.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, that it's at first, isn't it hard for the mind to accept that there's nothing wrong, there's nothing that really needs to be fixed, nothing needs to be changed in order for that which is to be as it is?
I think it is the greatest challenge, in fact, because we defend what we think we know, and what we think we know becomes our context for living, and we aren't able to really see beyond it very easily. So one of the ways that I discuss this with my clients that's often considered very helpful is to consider the idea of the separate self, the personal self, the Sally identity that comes with a ton of concepts and labels and conditions as impersonal nothingness, because it's in making anything personal that makes it hard to see beyond and makes it painful. And that's why this journey of awakening and self-exploration can be painful, when we think that what we're facing is really real. The
Yes.
ideas that I have about myself that are, and everyone houses these ideas. In fact, the idea of separation is built on nothing lovely, nothing that champions feeling good. It's built on, you're a worthless piece of crap, typically, for most people.
For
And
most
that
people, yes, yes.
something,
But it's
some
also built
variation.
on, isn't it also built on all the positive expectations as well? The all the good, the person is either trying to get towards goodness, whatever it thinks it is. And of course, there's often a transition from looking for it in the external world to looking for it in the internal world, but it's still a looking and trying to get away from what it thinks is not to its advantage or painful. So towards pleasure or towards joy, and away from pain or suffering.
Yes.
Isn't that just the essence of, as you called it, the Sally or the Hales or whatever your name is? That is the
Yes, that
essence of
is.
that, isn't it?
Mm. And you raise what I consider to be one of the greatest obstacles that we face, that this idea that we can be a better person as opposed to a good person. This world of opposites has us playing a game that is unwinnable. And so we all stretch ourselves as far as we can towards the better person end, to
Yes,
be
yes.
the best person that I can be. And I love the teachings of Joel Goldsmith when it comes to this conversation, that good person, bad person, still person. That
Exactly.
we're not here to stretch this into being a better version, because that implies there's a not so better
Yes,
person.
yes,
It's still in this uh, realm of duality where there's good and bad, right and wrong.
yes, yes.
And it is in leaving that behind entirely to realize that that's the unwinnable game. What already is whole, perfect, and complete, so that that sense of wholeness, that self that we're speaking of already is, regardless of any concept that I hold about myself, regardless of any thought or any belief or any sensation or feeling or behavior, regardless of this meat suit, I already am. And what I already am is the greatest thing there ever was.
Yes,
And
yes.
realizing that goes, well, I use the word beyond, but it's actually before, because what I am precedes the capacity to know anything. It precedes the capacity to think and believe and experience. And so I found that I was ripping myself off by thinking at the downstream end of what's possible, rather than just returning back little by little to the wholeness of being, which goes beyond the need to be anything in the world.
Yes, yes. Well put. That, and I love what you said. It was a few minutes ago now, but I didn't want to interrupt your flow. But I love what you said, that the person is actually nothingness, impersonal nothingness, because it appears so real, but it's never been real. There actually never has been a true person. There's the appearance of the person for sure, but just like the appearance of water in a mirage, it doesn't have any true substance. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. 100%. And that's the greatest challenge. We've believed our senses to the exclusion of truth. We've believed what presents before our eyes and our ears and our sensations and our taste buds. And it happens to be the lesser self, the least of what's available to us, and to stay stuck there, which to me felt like a prison. I think that it's often referred to as hell. Hell isn't a place that we go if we've been good or bad. It is the belief that we're something that we're not. And so this idea of the person that we have attached all of our identity to, we put all of our eggs in the basket of being a someone with something to do, and perhaps
somewhere
we shouldn't have. Yeah, exactly.
Yes. I spoke over that last, I didn't hear that last point, just the last few words. What was that?
I was referring to us having put all of our eggs into the basket of being this thing that we see, and perhaps we shouldn't have. That there is so much more to us that we don't get shown how to reveal, but it is self-revealing when we actually look. It's a matter of simply looking. And once you do start to look, the evidence becomes very clear, and the person that seemed so apparent and compelling is not so apparent and compelling anymore. And we come to realize that the infinite love of what is begins to leak through, begins to shine through a little bit more and more and more and more. And we find ourselves on a journey of simply expanding in that all-encompassing love. Doesn't get better than that.
Yes, it's beautiful. Beautifully put. So, is there some things you can share that people can use to help with this exploration? Do you have anything comes to mind as something you think would be helpful?
Yes. I feel like I'm here with a gift and a mission to guide people to see the false as false. I have to say I rejected that plan for my life for a really long time, because it's, for many people at the beginning of the journey, it's very confronting to question. And so I find myself working with people typically who have walked the same path I did, which is stretch the limits of personal growth and self-improvement, and really done a lot of thinking about themselves and exploration already, to be able to ask the final questions about the reality of what I am, seeing clearly what I am not. So I'd love to share with you, if you're open to it, a little process that I
I'd love
teach.
That. Again, when some of the people I interview don't share any process because they talk. They don't talk. Nothing or beingness talks, and they don't even acknowledge the person. But for some of the other people I've spoken to who are more similar to you, offer wonderful things that people can do to explore this absence of a person and the unreality of the limitation. So I'd love to hear that. I mean, again, the reason that we call what we do the Sedona method is it's a series of processes that have evolved over decades that that help people shed limitation and then help people look through or beyond or under, as you put it, beyond, under. I don't remember the deeper, all of those of what we think is real. So go for it, please.
Yeah. Because I found myself aware of the idea of oneness, aware of the idea of spiritual truth, but really stuck in that gap between a very obvious me personality and a destination elsewhere that I wanted to be, not realizing that it was right here where I am. And I think that what really was illuminated for me, and this was as a result of inquiry, is this I, this idea of what is this I? And I had an incredible moment of clarity that, I want to say, jolted me into oneness, that the I is the I that we all share. So inquiry, as I like to share it, and this is for anyone who wants to walk that path from the sense of a personal self who can accumulate a bunch of stuff in this world and still finds that fulfillment is lacking, still doubts in some way. And so I want to answer that question, because true fulfillment that is permanent, a lack of doubt, a lack of worry, and knowing of the self is the answer that I was seeking, and I'm pretty sure I'm not alone. So inquiry, I like to say, has two parts. Inquiry in the first part is exploring what is false to see that which is false.
Yes.
To inquire and clearly see that which is true. So it's like it has two branches, but in truth, there isn't. There is only one thing. So as A Course in Miracles teaches, we speak of duality to navigate the way to oneness. And so the process that I like to use is to question perspective. I find that this idea that the world is a diagnostic tool of my state of mind. My research for my PhD thesis was an epic literary review, as well as an in vivo study that had me reading literally hundreds of books on consciousness, which led me to really clearly see through practical application of what I'd been reading, that what we see on the outside or perceive as outside of us is really just a representation of our state of mind. And so we can use everything that we see as a diagnostic tool for the idea of separation to be illuminated and released.
Great.
Now, the way that I teach that is that we begin with upsets, anything that upsets us. It might be something simple. It might be something that we might call big. A Course in Miracles says that there is no big or small when it comes to disturbance of peace. It's all a disturbance of peace. So we're looking for the obvious disturbances to peace so that those layers can be peeled back to begin to reveal that luminous essence of being that is the very light of life itself, the very cause of existence. So upset represents everything about the senses, our emotions, our thoughts, our beliefs, our feelings, emotions, sensations, our body, our behaviors. So we shine the light of them, but importantly, as the observer, without taking anything personally, recognizing that perspective isn't truth. Perspective is just a bunch of ideas and sensations that have been wrapped up together at a very basic understanding that we can look at. And when we start to look, we're able to go to that deepest, most point, which, as I recognize it, and also A Course in Miracles tells us, is the belief in separation. And upon that one belief of separation, everything else appears. It's like the switch to the light that comes on that illuminates the show of a personal life. And when we persistently question that one belief, the belief in separation, we begin to see that it never existed in the first place.
Yes, that's right. It never really was.
It never really was. And so many of the enlightened masters and teachers tell us that straight up. You're not what you believe yourself to be. There never has been a you. Who is it that's doing the looking?
Right, exactly.
Where is the person? And when you begin to look, you can prove to yourself that the person never existed.
Right.
And it can come as quite a shock. And so that's why inquiry into the self, I think, is, I like to call it prayer. Prayer is how we stay anchored in an expanding ocean of love and stay stabilized and stay held and stay protected and increase in our own sense of safety and security. Mm-hmm. So we question, and the key is forgiveness. Mm. So I acknowledge the ancient teachings. I just would like to point out that none of this is my work, and I'm happy to share anything and everything because I don't think anyone has a monopoly on the truth. It's no one's method. If anyone gets credit for anything, it has to be God. Mm. Or a similar word.
Yeah, or a similar word. Some people react to that word.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Yes. I speak to that in my book, actually, and have worked with lots of people who find it not to their taste.
Right.
And that's okay. It's not about language in the end. And so prayer is the way that we anchor in the truth, but forgiveness is how we bridge the gap between what I've believed myself to be and what I really am. Forgiveness is the supreme healing elixir, and that's why so many of the, it looks like different spiritual traditions, including Christianity, including A Course in Miracles, tell us that forgiveness is the purpose of life. Forgiveness is the way, no ifs or buts. It's how we heal the mind of the personal perspective in order to realize I am love. And no fear exists because only love is real. And that which is all-encompassing can have no opposites. It really becomes very logical in the end. So forgiveness is the healing elixir. It's really the reason why I left my former profession in functional medicine and naturopathy, because forgiveness heals. Remedies that treat the body-mind complex produce temporal effects. And I had a period in my career where I had brave, usually mums, but there were some dads saying, I'm grateful that I used to work specifically in chronic child care. And mums would say to me, I'm really glad, of course, that my child is no longer experiencing symptoms, but I'm still anxious. I'm still upset. I'm still worried. Yes. I'm still in fear, which was shining the light for me at that point on my journey at the temporal fixes that distract us. And even a mother who's seeing their child recover from a chronic health issue isn't in peace.
Right.
And that was the most painful thing for these brave people to share with me, which really led me to go beyond. I could no longer continue to treat bodies. Rather, forgiveness I found to be truly miraculous.
Yes. But who's forgiving?
Exactly. And that is the journey of going beyond the mind that can only be experienced. Okay. This is where I think that the practical journey is what we're being called to. Information consumption is a hindrance. I don't know about you, but I've got several bookcases, more full than the one behind me, looking for that, trying to fill my mind with with what is that? What is that thing? But it can only be experienced. And so the call to action is to look and see and begin to walk that path, because it's for those of us who realize there is no somebody, there is no person, there's not even forgiveness required. What we're forgiving is a dream, an illusory perspective to realize that the forgiven mind actually already is. There's nothing to forgive.
Right.
So forgiveness is a paradox.
It is.
It's an activity that we engage in to recognize the forgiven mind. It's a bit like the paradox of emptying to be filled. We enter into that state of nothingness, the essential nature of life itself, in order to recognize our fullness. To become everything, we have to become nothing. And so this is the path to walk. But my own realization of oneness and love was only found when I actually did the work, when I only actually posed the questions. So I would love to say that my book or any book has the answers, but I don't think it does. I think what we need to do is to question within and see for ourselves, because it's a bit like saying, tell me about the taste of chocolate.
Right.
Who only wants to hear about it rather than stick it in their mouth and chew it?
Right.
And so many of those ancient parables speak of a similar kind of metaphor. The one that I often refer to is the traveller who'd heard speak of the view from a mountaintop in a faraway land, and he wanted to go and see it. And he got there and he was walking the path and met by all those who'd reached the top and were coming back. And he said, what was it like? Repeatedly to everyone he passed, what was it like? Is that ever going to satisfy anyone, hearing about it?
No.
It can't.
Definitely
We have
not.
to walk that path.
So, what is the process you share, or was that it? And I missed it.
I call it expose, forgive, and pray. So we expose perspective.
Okay.
We forgive what is discovered, to let it go, to withdraw belief. So it is our own thoughts, assumptions, built on top of that original decision for separation, that we unwind from, that it's really just a process of putting down what I am not. And the process of exposing, which I call E for exposing, F for forgiveness, and P for prayer, is really just a process of witnessing what's bound up in any situation of upset, which we can all easily do. This is really basic stuff. We can see what thoughts we have and stories and feelings and beliefs, so that we can see the perceptual package, to let it go, and forgive, and see the truth, pray on the truth, which reveals itself in an instant. This is the process of miracle making, or allowing peace to replace what looked like pain sometimes only a few minutes ago.
So what questions would you ask someone who or is there a process you can take everyone through to do this?
Yes, absolutely. So first of all, I think it's important to acknowledge anyone willing to do this work, because it's not easy. It's not easy because we have wrapped up our entire being and identity in being something that we're not. And when we begin to look, we have to be clear that everything starts to unravel in the most glorious way. And we begin by recognizing, first of all, that I'm upset. When we notice we're upset, I often say to my clients that this is profound awareness that you are developing. And that's important for one reason, that you're expanding your contextual field, the awareness that we have about ourselves, life, and other people reflects our contextual field, which is basically our knowledge base from which we live. So as soon as we begin to look in a different way as the witness, we expand our contextual field. And what that's doing essentially is opening the door to the more that we've been unable to see, to bring and allow peace into our lives. So here's the process, Hale. I'll be quick about it.
Oh no, you don't have to be quick about it. That's the meat.
So what we've got is the first of all, staying as the witness, simply looking, no judgment, with compassion. We're just looking and noticing what's arising. So if I'm upset, and it's probably easy to use an example in this situation, perhaps I'm upset because my child spoke rudely to me. Mm-hmm. So I would take something like that and recognize I'm upset. What's important to realize is that upset is part of the personal paradigm. It's a program of separation that's playing. There is no meaning that's inherent in any situation. So how my child speaks has actually nothing to do with me.
Right.
It has nothing to, or anything else. And so when I feel upset in a situation like that, I can rest assured that it's telling me something about a framework, a paradigm that I have attached my identity to. So I recognize, first of all, I'm upset. And then I go looking within. What are the emotions? What are the stories? What are the thoughts? What's the fear there? One of the best ways to determine what fear is hiding in any situation is to consider, if this situation persisted into the future, I'm so afraid that, and it's always something about me. I'm not lovable. I'm never going to have the love and respect that I want, would be possible examples in that situation. We then look for the beliefs that are hiding a little bit deeper. So it's a bit like, as we peel one layer away, we can look to another layer and look to another layer and look to another layer, all the way down to that original decision for separation, and realize that perspective, that effect, was built on that cause being the belief in separation. So we're able to unwind with that basic framework, but there's many questions that we might pose. I love Byron Katie's question, is that really true?
Right.
That's also part of the Sedona practice as well, isn't it? To ask, is this really? Is this really?
Is this actually happening? Is this really true? Is this?
Yes.
Yeah. There's so many questions like that. Absolutely.
Yes. So it's a variation on a theme that is not only old, but proven. The minute we begin to question, what has been my personal obsession is finding as many questions as we possibly can to point to the false so that we can be liberated as quickly as possible. So I also like to refer to the shadow archetypes as a way of helping us to see that we have this impersonal nothingness that is the collective unconsciousness that we've just attached. We just picked up an idea and ran with it without questioning it. One of my clients said to me yesterday, her husband had read the beginning chapter of my book and was reeling because he said, I've never thought to question the reality of the problem. Which
that's so common. Most people just assume the illusion is real, whatever it is, whatever illusion we live in. That's another good question, by the way. I'm sure you use this one too. Is that actually true?
Is that actually true?
Or is that just an appearance?
Yep. Yes. And so we can see just by looking within that our perspective is standing on a foundation of nothingness.
Yes.
Why on earth would we hold on to it? Because it is only our perspective that causes our suffering. If only love is real, if fulfillment of being is the reality, why on earth would we persist in holding a perspective that has us blind to love?
Yes.
And so these questions,
well, another question is there actually anyone holding it too? Isn't it?
Yeah.
Because again, we assume that we're holding on to it, but that too is just an assumption, isn't it? Isn't it just there's just a habit pattern
Yes.
in thought that when question doesn't belong to anyone. That's another question too. I'm sure you use this one too. Does that actually belong to anyone?
Yes. Yes, it's brilliant, and it really is the way that we can accelerate our knowing of being peace-filled, saturated in peace, really, by asking these kinds of questions. And everyone's heard, I'm not my thoughts, I'm not my feelings, I'm not my beliefs. Right. But there's no one actually having thoughts and feelings and beliefs. There's no thinker thinking the thoughts.
Yes, yes.
And so we begin to see that as we question. But as I was saying earlier, it's impossible to grasp intellectually without looking.
Yeah, well, each time it is recognized by no one that particular thing was just an illusion, it simply dissolves, revealing that which just always is.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. And so once the process of inquiry is explored, and I'm a bit of a go hard or go home kind of person. So the process I like to take people through if I'm working with them privately is to be incredibly thorough, because the belief in separation is hiding in every moment. And if we dismantle it in one moment, we can dismantle it in all moments, to collapse the perspective of there being a timeline and just sink deeply into the present moment. So a thorough exploration of any upset can lead to profound awakening for many, many people. And in forgiving, in letting go, in forgiving, in recognizing I am already forgiven, I already am. Prayer is the next step of that process. So exposing, forgiving, praying is a bridge until it's not needed anymore. Just like any concept, they're concepts until they're not needed.
Yes.
And so that's my little journey in life, to be here and be with the one brotherhood or sisterhood, no gender bias at all.
Right.
To realize the one creation that is magnificent, that is all-encompassing, and that is love.
Wonderful. Yes. Yes. All is love. I couldn't agree more. So, do you have a challenge for people, something they can start doing right away, even before they explore your work or anything like that?
Yes, absolutely. To spend a minute looking as the silence, as the stillness. So I don't want to go on for too long, because I find that this awareness of the silence is incredibly profound. This awareness of stillness is truly game-changing for so many people, because we're just so consumed by what we give our attention to. We don't realize the field of silence in which we hear sound, or the field of stillness in which we become aware of movement. And so when we begin to pay just a little bit more attention, on the silence and the stillness. And there's a reason for this, because they happen to be part of the field of truth, the eternal field of that which is present always, rather than that which is temporal, which we're just so fascinated by when we believe ourselves to be a person. Yes. So for anyone wanting to really expand in the peace that passeth understanding, as we were told in sacred text, to look from and in and perhaps to begin with, the stillness and the silence. Recognizing that I can only hear sound because there is a backdrop of silence can really accelerate this journey of coming home to oneness. And it can be quite profound, to the point that it's deafening when we start to recognize the silence. It was always there, and with a little bit of attention. And so I suggest that the challenge that anyone can begin to undertake is to look at the silence, look at the stillness, giving a minute or two. You know, I'm all for as many times a day as you'd like to, but just once, just taste this truth, and the door opens for everyone who knocks.
Yes. And I am sure you use this languaging sometimes too. Isn't it really, as opposed to looking towards the silence, isn't it as silence?
Yes, exactly. And so that is the preference. But for many people, perhaps if there's anyone listening who hasn't explored this concept, it can be easy to look right where you are, because you're not in the wrong place. I think that's something that was such a relief on my own journey, to realize I'm not in the wrong place. I'm right where I'm meant to be, because I is right where I am. And that's the only thing that I'm looking for. And I can't fail to find it, because I'm already it. So it is that as the silence, as the stillness is the way.
Great. Good. So any parting words you have for everyone?
Well, I think I'd like to just briefly expand on what I just said. You can't fail.
Yes.
No one fails. You can't fail to realize what we are, what I am, because I already am. That which I am precedes everything I'm aware of. It's a bit like I just got caught up in a show, in a long-running drama show. There's plenty of them on Australian TV that shouldn't be. But this long-running drama show has just had me distracted from the truth. It doesn't change the truth. It doesn't replace the truth. It can't, in fact, touch reality. And what I am is incorruptible and invulnerable. And I just can't muck up trying to locate that. I can't mess up finding perfect peace, because it's my nature. I can't go wrong. And I think that's a really, really helpful starting point, actually. You can't go wrong. I'm already found. Try and not be. The I never, ever leaves, does it? It never goes anywhere. I often say it never pops next door for a cup of tea and leaves you. It's always right where you are. So you can rest assured that there's a miraculous safety net that has always been right where I am.
I hope you've enjoyed our conversation with Sally Gray. You can learn more about Sally at drsallygray.com. That's drsallygray.com. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe so you have immediate access to future episodes. Please give us a 5-star rating and share it with the people you care about. If you'd like to learn more about my work, my mentor Lester Levenson's work, and the Sedona method, please visit www.sedona.com. As you explore our site, you learn the key to lasting happiness, success, peace, and emotional well-being. We have books, courses, events, and plenty of free material to explore. Again, go to sedona.com. That's sedona.com. Thank you for being here, and we'll catch you in the next episode of Letting Go and the Greatest Secret.